Hey, good morning, everybody. Tim and Tim are back. It's our favorite day of the week, Tuesday, because it's the Tim and Tim show, Tuesdays at 10. Good morning, Tim. How you doing? Oh, yeah. Stroke it. Give me the goods. Make sure yourself looking good.
I had a little piece right here. I had to.
How you doing, man?
Not too bad. Wish my internet connection would work. So if I freeze up, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Don't you got all you're a tech guy. You should have all this stuff figured out already.
That's why I'm hotspotting it.
No, you're kidding me.
Yeah, I think somebody cut a line at the street.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, thanks for the heads up if that's going to cancel out on you. But all right. So this week we've had some really well, Tim wasn't involved in these conversations, but I know that he's going to have a lot of good things to say about it. So this week we had a lot of conversations with various people on our teams, specifically around property management, asset management. As we've said in previous weeks, we are focusing heavily on asset management and working on achieving the business plan, right? We've kind of cooled off on acquisitions, and that's good. And we're making sure to kind of separate and delegate duties and get everything done because we got a couple of refinances hitting next year that might be refinances or exits, but we're analyzing the business plan, analyzing the underwriting, kind of playing with it, trying to figure out what we're going to do with these. And, I just want to give a quick shout out here to my boy, Chris Beatty. He's a partner on one of our deals. And this week, he just really stepped it up. He fucking came in and just crushed it for us. And, I actually texted him this morning and I just told him how grateful I was to be a partner of his because he led by example. And, for one of the properties that we're working on, we've been having some issues with leasing. And at the end of the day, we were asking all these questions, but it felt like nothing was really happening, right? I don't want to say nothing was getting done, but nothing was happening. So basically, what Chris and I did a couple days ago was we sat down with everyone involved in the party and we just went through everything step by step individually with the team. And I texted him and I told him I was very appreciative of that experience because look, nobody's perfect at the end of the day. And it's very easy to say, hey, we talked about these things and they're going to go do it, but then nothing ever happens and there's always an excuse. So what did we do? We sat down and we went through it ourselves. And there's power there. There's power there of being a leader and by leading by example, because the misconception here is that you hire a company to do something for you and then you're boom, hands off, and you can just kind of go do whatever you want. And that is the furthest thing from the truth because at the end of the day, you own the place and you need to make sure that you are taking that you as the owner are being held accountable, right? And even though things are not being done or you think that they're not being done, if they're not being done to your standard, you need to be the one that goes in and shows them what your standard is. And I'm not bad mouthing anybody here. I'm just saying, I'm just calling it how it is. I'm calling a spade a spade. Like this, the way that those conversations went and the outcomes of those conversations were significantly improved because of going through this step-by-step example. So, shout out to Chris again, really came through and is doing what's best for the property at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean that's the yeah. I wasn't part of those, but that's absolutely it's a good point, right? Because I think you and I were kind of talking about this a little bit, for a different reason, but it was like, you know, w- a lot of people get into this to have fun, right? Like they get into it to kind of change their what they're doing day to day and stuff like that. And sometimes I think people think that this doesn't. There's no hard conversations that come from this, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's just not the truth, right? Like hard conversations happen all the time. At the end of the day, this is a business, right? Um, and you've got to have those, and sitting down, and I like what you did because you took a practical example, a recent practical example. You talked about it, and then you talked about how to make it different moving forward, or how to do it different moving forward, and that's just kind of management 101 right there, and well done. And yeah, I agree. Chris Beatty, man, he's top notch. But the at the end of the day, if you're going to run high performing teams, you've got to have those kind of conversations. You got to do those kind of things, and you got to periodically review, and then quite honestly, kind of call people out on their shit.
Yeah,
To be honest.
ultimately that's what it is, right? At the end of the day, it's calling people out on their shit. And we have a great relationship with these people still. Like we love working with them. It was just, hey, sometimes there needs to be a little fire under the seat in order to kind of change some things and implement some changes and things. And I like to use this analogy of like, those TV commercials where you walk into a house and everyone else can smell the smell, but you can't smell it because you become nose blind. Well, that happens to people, whether you're a property management company or, living in your own house. Like you start as a property manager, maybe you don't see it the way that I see it because I'm the owner and I don't look at the property day in and day out. I don't deal with it. So I'm going to have a different view and a different perspective about the property. And I really like the hands-on involvement, and it was really eye-opening. I'm not going to lie to you, because what it did was it made me reevaluate other properties that we had under, not under contract. God, we've been closing so many deals, it just comes out naturally. Deals under contract. Other deals that we're currently managing. And it was like, you know what, actually, let me spend some time this morning and I'm going to go through all of the listings for all of these properties and see, hey, like, what is the marketing tactic that's going to attract people to my property, right? And one of the, I like using Dogwood Lane, the apartment that I own down in Florence. That it's just me on that deal. And what I did was I started Googling it. I was like, wait a second, I can't even find this place. So what did I do this morning? I went in and I set up a Google listing, or not a listing or whatever it is, but I like claimed the business and I marked it as an apartment complex and I did all of these things. And I was like, this was not difficult to do. I uploaded some photos and things like that. And I was like, now if somebody Googles Dogwood Lane Apartments in Quinby or Florence, you'll find it, right? And that nobody was finding it before. So if I couldn't find it, then what do you think that another tenant is going to find it? And when we were on this call with the apartments.com people, they were like, they were kind of telling us how to structure the photos and do all this kind of different stuff. I actually kind of enjoyed it because a lot of it made sense to me. But they're like, tenants that are looking for a place to live have the attention span of a goldfish, like
Right.
half a nanosecond. If you don't have the right photo in the right place with the right information, they're going to go somewhere else. And it made me think, wow, I got to really take a step back and reanalyze all of the properties that we have and see how are these things being marketed? Because at the end of the day, whether you're raising money or you're trying to buy deals or you're trying to market your property, like we as real estate people, we're in sales and marketing. Like you are a sales and marketing professional and your vehicle is real estate.
Yeah, and you got to stay on top of, Tim's talking about a very hands-on approach, but you got to stay on top of your property manager too. Exactly what you're talking about. How are these things being marketed? Recently, we went in and checked out. We checked out a property that we own, and we had a few vacancies on there, and we were like, man, why is this happening? And we started to dig into it a little bit more. Like you said, the marketing that was out there, for one, was using photos that still had the former property management's logo across them.
Mhm.
And they were bad photos. It's part of the reason we got rid of that property management company, is that they took shortcuts on things. These were bad photos. That's what was out there, that's what folks were seeing when they would go on apartments.com and things like that. So took care of that, right? And then on top of it, we started to question our current property manager of, why didn't you see these? Like,
Mhm.
you're the one managing the apartments.com account.
Right.
Why didn't you see this? Why did I have to call it out? So then we started. So coming out of that conversation, we've been requesting weekly activity reports for the accounts on apartments.com, and so we can see, how many people viewed it, how many people requested a tour, how many people actually toured, that kind of thing. So yeah, man, you got to stay on top of that stuff. You know, if you don't stay on top of most of your property management companies aren't going to do it either.
Yeah, we're all human at the end of the day, right? I mean, we're not bastardizing anybody or saying anything. We're just literally we're talking facts. Like these are
Right.
actual events with actual conversations, and a lot of people that watch these shows, they just want to see what it looks like to be, Tim and I. Like, what are the conversations look like? What are some things that we're dealing with? And what are things that we've learned that we want to tell other people about so they can learn from our mistakes? And God, I feel like I've heard these mistakes before from other people, but you don't realize it till you're going through it. So, like,
Right.
sometimes you could call it like beating a dead horse, but at the end of the day, like you're going to hear something different every single time you hear it because you're somewhere different in your journey, or like, in your real estate investing journey, like it's not relevant to you at that point in time. Like, somebody that's never done a deal before, right? Never done a deal at all, right? Does not know what it looks like to go through the week of closing, and for nothing, like the week of closing is not the main priority for that person at this point in time. Like their main priority right now is finding deals and finding investors, or maybe learning how to underwrite. So like they might completely gloss over a show that we do about getting to the closing table, right? Because they're like, well, this is not even applicable to me. Like I'm trying to get my first deal. I'm trying to find my first deal. I'm trying to raise my first $100,000. That's why that doesn't, I'm just kind of in one ear out the other, right? So like I'm talking about this right now because it's something that we went through, and it was like a aha moment for me where I had to go back and kind of check myself and say, wait a second, like I know I talk about these things all the time. Now this is my action item to go back and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, hey, speaking of closing table, I just finished my longest closing ever, 8 days. Took 8 days.
Oh boy.
So
Almost as long as the longest ever purchase and sale agreement was, what was that, like 6 weeks?
oh the yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's with you and me. I actually had one earlier this year that was going on about 2 months, a little over
No.
2 months.
Oh,
Apparently, there was some COVID involved.
oh, all right, I
But
digress. Go on with your
but
story.
guys,
Sorry.
really, that's he's absolutely right. Like you got to stay on top of this stuff. It's not passive. I tell Tim all the time. I'm like, I'm ready to start. I'm ready to start a series called "So You Want to Be a Operator," that kind of thing, or so you think you want to be a GP, right? That kind of thing, because a lot of people don't see all of this stuff. All they see is finding a deal and walking a property and doing renovations and closing and checks, right? Nobody sees all the work that goes into making sure those properties perform, making sure you hit numbers, make sure you perform on the business plan, and then at the end of the day, all the hard conversations that actually have to happen. And Tim, you and I have been having a lot of those conversations lately, not just with property managers, not just with, we've had some people come in and join us on properties this year, and when the shit hits the fan, I like to say when the shit hits the fan, that's when people's true colors will come out. So there's been some times when things have been difficult and like some true colors have come through, and it's kind of makes you step back and go, hey, we need to rethink that one. But
Hmm.
that's, I mean, come on. I mean, anybody who tells me that they're in business and they don't have to rethink something on a regular basis, you're kidding. You're kidding me. You're lying to me. Um, I'd love to see that example for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know that's one thing that I love about our show, and nothing's really off limits. We talk about what's going on in our businesses and our personal lives, and we call it like it is. Like it's just straight facts of what's happening in our lives on a weekly basis. Like we are owner operators. We find our own deals. We raise our own money. We operate our own deals. We don't raise money for other people's deals and then walk away from it. Like we are in the trenches on every single deal that we do. We sign the debt. Like if anything goes wrong, it's on us at the end of the day. And there's a lot of people out there that do what we do, and then there's some people that just do capital raising or just do due diligence or just deal find or whatever, right? Or just KP, which is not a bad role, just being a
No,
KP. But at the end of the day, like, we just talk about it, right? Because I value transparency, and I value honesty, and I value just kind of documenting the journey of what we're going through. Because like 10 years from now, we can come back and watch this video and say, oh my God, you remember when we were going all through that stuff? Like what a point in time our lives were. And I know that a lot of people talk about like they like to get up and journal, and this is my journal. Like this is how I journal. I do it with a video. I enjoy talking with you, Tim, and I enjoy like interacting with everybody that's part of our show, and they put comments up and stuff like that. This is my journal. This is how I document what everything's going on in my life. And if people want to know what it really looks like, just watch any of our videos. I mean, we have 2 years worth of videos now out there. What's that? 52. We got 104 videos out there now that you can go back and watch.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, hey, I like this one right here. So Thea, I'm gonna call you out here. I agree. So a lot of people, and don't get me wrong. I mean, there are truly ways to set up automated systems and stuff for your business. But for you, I'll give you personal examples. I went to Turks and Caicos this year. I spent 2 weeks in California. I was just on a 3-day event in outside of Savannah. I worked every one of those trips. And to your point, specifically said on phone calls with property managers as I was walking around San Diego with my family. So yeah, I was out there doing stuff, but I was working.
Mhm.
And there's very little passive about this. It's hard to turn loose of things, and some of that's by design, right? Like
Mhm.
we're learning some of this stuff, so we want to learn it, so we know it, so we can delegate it, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that's like step four. And I think we're around step two. Um, so, but that's like step four, right? Like what we were meeting with somebody yesterday. It's funny that we're talking about this. We were meeting with somebody yesterday, and he made a really, really good comment. It was like it's hard to delegate it if you don't know it, right?
Yeah, you can't
Um,
delegate if you can't do.
yeah. So, hey, Tim and I are, and don't get us wrong, Tim and I are big believers in who not how. We've
Mhm.
both read that book multiple times. I know I have. And I'm a big believer in that, but at the same time, I'm also a big believer in knowing how to do something. Um, and that doesn't mean I'm responsible for it, but I like to know how to do it, so that I can understand how to have the conversation Vitali had with his team yesterday. It's hard to have that conversation if you don't know how to do something.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and kind of going back to the whole Chris thing, leading by example. I can't speak enough about partnering with the right people that have experience. And
Yeah,
Chris has owned his own construction company for a very, very long time, and he's managed tons and tons and tons of people. And just his experience of being a business owner over the last 20 years really shone through right there. I mean, I just got a glimpse through the window of owning your own business for 20 years in an hour, a 30-minute phone call. I was like, holy crap. Now, if you can partner with people that you look up to and respect and that have strengths that complement your weaknesses where you can learn from them directly, you are going to put yourself in a way better situation than trying to be a solopreneur and figure everything out yourself, or try to delegate and do everything with VAs. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, you need to have partners, you need to learn from each other, you need to kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and you need to hold each other accountable within your own partnership and group.
yeah, completely. I completely agree. And it's great to have people that you can fall back on to ask them advice. Like, hey man, I'm looking at this and this seems way out of bounds.
Hmm.
But this is in your area of expertise. Can you tell me, like, am I just off here? Should I do I just need to suck it up and take it because it is what it is? And being able to have that conversation and them look at you and go, yeah, you're right. This is ridiculous. Or no, they're right. You need to manage towards this because this is the way it is. Um, so having those conversations with somebody that has that 20 years of experience, man,
Yeah,
is huge. Huge.
absolutely huge. Yeah.
Did I
uh,
say it right?
how do
All
you
right,
say it?
I said for you.
I was going to say fire. Fia, yeah. I mean, one thing I do want to kind of stress here is your sponsor. Your sponsor isn't always the one that you lean back on and make sure that everything is being done correctly, right? Like, your sponsor at the end of the day is in my correct me, call me on my bullshit here, Tim, but in my eyes, the sponsor is the one who's sponsoring the loan, not exactly sponsoring the deal itself or being responsible for the operations of the deal. The sponsor or the key principal is just has to be a qualifier in the eyes of the bank. Now, having a good sponsor is important, so that you qualify for the debt and all those good things. And it does open up the door for conversations where you can call them if you need to. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what I'm talking about is you need to have people that are experienced in the asset management world, not just in multifamily, but in business in general. Because multifamily is a business at the end of the day. So, like, it doesn't matter if you have experience in multifamily, triple net, or construction advice, or construction or whatever. Like, you managing people and managing teams is still the same, and having an understanding of the mindset of what's going through that employee's thought process and being able to digest it and communicate it properly and ask good questions in order to get the answer that you're looking for, right? Or the realization that you're looking for is wholly dependent on who's involved in your asset management team. Like the sponsor, in my opinion, can just sign the debt and ultimately kind of walk away from the deal. The asset management team, who take the majority of the GP, is the most critical team to making sure that you meet your objectives in the deal. And those
Yeah.
people or person that is, and I don't think that one person should be responsible for asset management. I do think that it needs to be a group effort because one, it's a lot of work, and two, like you need somebody to talk to hold yourself accountable and hold each other accountable against, and be able to bounce ideas off of. Like in this example, like Chris came in and helped out with is doing the asset management with me on this deal, and he came in and stepped up in a big way because he brought some experience, and he brought some experience to the table that I didn't, right? And that shone through right then and there.
Yeah, no, I agree. In fact, it's funny you say that. So over the last couple of weeks, guys, we closed on some stuff in Eastern South Carolina this year, and over the last few weeks, we've been really, really focused on those properties, making sure they're getting off to a great start. And I am I'm part of the asset management team, but we have two guys in that area that are more local, so they're more the boots on the ground portion of that. But to Tim's point, we talk on a regular basis. They check out the properties. They'll call me up and say, "Hey, I saw this. What do you think?" and things like that. And neither one of us are really like the lead on it. We're all just kind of a team. Um, and at the end of the day, we're all kind of talking about, we saw this. We think we need to make this kind of adjustment. What do you think? And it's really a group effort. Now,
Well, it's
ultimately,
absolutely a collaboration effort on asset
yeah.
management.
Now, ultimately, this is Tim and I are two of the big leads on this one. I just said there's not really leads, but when it comes down to it, we're kind of the main asset holders here. So ultimately, it comes down to our call. But we 100%, have a very, very strong collaborative environment with those guys, and they're doing a tremendous job, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's
but
a group effort by far. And leading by example is always the one that's going to do what's necessary no matter what, right? And it's having the hard conversations, it's challenging people on their assumptions and throwing out ideas and being the person that's going against the grain, and not in a bad way. It's kind of just challenging people's thoughts and opinions, because everyone has a bias. If you like it or not, you have a bias, right? So and your bias might be right, it might be wrong, but it's important for the person to ask the question. That was one thing that I learned from my boss. Shout out to my boss, my old boss Jen at my W-2 job. But that was one thing that she would repeat all the time. She was like, "I'm just asking the question." And even if we all knew the answer, somebody would ask the question and just start the conversation, because you never know where the conversation could go. And somebody could be assuming one thing, and then the other person assuming the other, and then you're just not even on the same path. So it's good to lead by asking the question on the good stuff and the bad stuff, because what that's going to do is spur conversation and ultimately resolve an issue faster than just letting it kind of fester and, oh well, I assumed you were going to handle it.
yeah, no, really good point. And to your point, you called it out. So there, you're referencing the boss from a W-2 job. I do it all the time. And it really does come down to what's your experience in a past life, for example. I mean,
Mhm.
I ran some really, really, really high performing technology teams, and I use stuff I learned over 23 years of that. I use that stuff in this every day, um, especially when it comes down to just having conversations.
Mhm.
Because sometimes you got to know when to sit back and listen. Sometimes you got to know when to kind of stick your foot in there and
Mhm.
interject, right? And those kind of lessons don't come overnight, right? I don't think that's a natural thing for most people. And it's
No.
something that you learn in hard conversations. My wife's been working in HR for 20 plus years, and I will tell you there's an art to hard conversations, and she's amazing at it. And speaking of who, not how, and knowing who to talk to, when it comes time to have conversations with people that are difficult, I will more often than not ping her first. I will ask her, hey, like, I got to have this conversation. What do you think? And a lot of times she guides me on that. And I'm not afraid to admit that at all, man. I mean, even after 23 years of managing people, I still look to her for advice on that stuff. And she's way better at it than I am. So why not? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. If you have that resource available, you might as well use it.
Yeah, it's just across the hall here. Um,
Do you ping her or do you actually get up and go talk to her?
it depends, man. You got to be careful when you walk in there. If you hear that keyboard clicking, you better not walk in.
Oh, the clack clack. Oh yeah, yeah. You definitely run away.
Yeah, man.
It sounds
Don't
fierce.
interrupt. Don't
She's writing
interrupt
up
her
an
in the
email.
middle of an email, man.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, hey, I don't regret my W-2 time. Like I've learned a lot. It really shaped me into who I am today, in terms of managing people and like my experience and my strengths and weaknesses and all that kind of stuff. So grateful for the experience, but also grateful to be out of that experience and kind of learning my own way and doing my own things now. And I think that there's always something new to learn. Like you're going to cross paths with different people along the way that are going to have different experiences, and sometimes you just need to shut up and get out of the way because put your ego aside and listen to somebody else's viewpoint and opinion and be open to change instead of just kind of you know forcing it down the field because that's the only way you know how to do it, right? There's people better suited for the job. There's better ways to accomplish the job. It's just be open to working with people and be somebody that people want to work with, not only because you listen, but also because you provide good advice or you ask good questions as well. Being a thought-provoking partner is also valuable because you bring a lot of value by just asking the question like, hey guys, like I know that we said it's going to cost X, but when was the last time that we got a new quote to see if those prices are still valuable or accurate? That's a good question. It's not derogatory. It's not condescending. It is asking the question and leading by example of saying, hey, we're going to challenge things along the way just to keep everybody honest.
Yeah, and that's a great example. Just recently, somebody walked in and was like, "Hey, we're ordering everything from this one place." And fans, for example, we're paying 200 plus for fans. We're like, we can get them. You can get those same fans at Lowe's for like $78.
Yeah.
And they came in and asked that question, and they were like, "That's just as simple, right, as this other place, and we're paying a third of the price." And that may not be that big a deal when you're doing like a house or whatever, but when you're talking 50 units,
Yeah.
that 140 bucks adds up real fast.
Yeah,
Um,
there are 60 ceiling fans in my apartment complex. So 60 times 200, right, is a lot more expensive than 60 times 70.
just by that person asking that one question, right?
That's
They
right.
came with a different viewpoint, asked that one question. We did the math. We saved over $60,000 on the project.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
incredible.
one
That's
question.
right.
Great.
That's huge. Absolutely
Yeah.
huge. Well, all right, guys, it is 10:30. Thanks so much for joining this week. Hope you guys are having a great end of the year. I know a lot of people have kind of closed up shop and are not really doing anything for the rest of the year. And hey, whatever suits your boat is great. And I appreciate you joining in today because I know that you could be doing anything else. Time is the most valuable asset. So I always appreciate you guys joining in. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate you being here. Hey, if anything else, shoot us a message. We'd love to talk about this kind of stuff. If you're interested in being a guest on our show, shoot either one of us a message and we'll hook it up and try to get you on in the next couple of weeks here.
A guest? Man, we haven't done that in
I
so
know
long.
we haven't had a guest in months.
We need a guest.
We do.
Come on, folks. Reach out to us.
All right, guys. All right, Tim, take us out.
So if you want to be on the show, let us know. And hey, by the way, 2023 is around the corner. If you're looking for goals and some help with that, Tim and I help with that kind of stuff. Check out Making Moves anytime and let us know. But other than that, guys, have a great week and see you next Tuesday.
Peace.